All right, let's continue on. W3 Schools has got a nice tutorial on SQL. Now, I do want you to realize, and I've said this before, so I'm going to repeat myself. There are different flavors or varieties of SQL. They all do the same thing, but there can be syntactic differences. The way that you write a query in MySQL will be a little different than the way you write it in SQL Server, will be a little different than the way you write it in Access, will be a little different than the way you write it in Oracle, etc. So this is an SQL tutorial. It is not a MySQL tutorial. Now, you can find those online too. What's just kind of nice about this one is, again, it is very, very example based. And you can see when you go along the side here, there's a lot of stuff. Now, we're not going to go over each and every thing that's in there, but we're going to hit on a lot of the points that are in there, all right, as we go on, just so you're aware of that. Must be outside. All right, so as we start to go back into this then, this was the last one that we did, and you could do this for everyone. If I got my counts right, I believe there are 27 customers, 8 employees, 944 orders, 3975 order detail, 6 categories, 40 products, 90 product vendors, and 10 vendors. So that's the stuff that we're going to be working with. Now, the next thing I'd like to do is, just so we get an example of it, I know you've done this already, but I want to show you two different ways of putting ourselves in as a customer. All right. So I'm going to assume that when you do this, you're going to use you. Okay. All right. First, I'm going to show you the hard way. It will work. You can do it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with doing it, but it's a lot of work. All right. So I can come in here. I'll make this a little bit bigger. I don't want to make it too big because then you can see it starts going off the screen a little bit here. So I'm going to say here, and remember, this is a case insensitive language. Sometimes I know that, if you look at the examples I gave you, I put keywords in uppercase. When I type in now, I'm probably not going to do that. I'm just going to put everything in lowercase. All right, but it really and truly doesn't matter. So I'm going to first show you what I consider to be the hard way of doing it. And that is, remember, it's an insert into. And into what? Well, the table you want to put it into. So if I want to add a new customer, I say customers. All right. Then what I do is I list every single field. This is, like I said, this is the hard way of doing it. In parentheses, so I'm going to say here, customer first name, comma. You don't have to put each one on a new line, but I'm doing it just so you can see everything I'm doing here. Customer last name, comma. Customer, what was next? Street address, I think it is. Yep. Street address, comma. Customer city, comma. Customer state, comma. Customer zip code, comma. Customer area code, comma. Customer phone number. Now that's totally fine. That listed out every single field that we wanted to put in. I don't do it like that. You can. It's totally fine to do that. And then, so this whole thing has got to be inside of a parenthesized list. All right. Then, for example, you use the word values. Again, I'll put it all in lowercase, like I said. And in parentheses again, this is the way it'll be actually put into the database. So in single quotes, Jeff, Scott, I'll put like about 4 of these on each line. So 751 Parr Road, Wentzville, Missouri. I believe that was also not a numeric field. Area code and phone number. All right. There are some advantages to doing it this way. The disadvantage is it's a hell of a lot of typing, and it's easy to screw it up. Also, when you look at this, even though I've made the A capitalized and the C, it doesn't matter. It can all be uppercase. It can all be lowercase. All right. But what I want to get across to you is when I do it this way, typically if you're going to do it this way, you're going to put these in the right order. But to my knowledge, I could even put them in the wrong order if I did that. So in other words, let's say I flip-flop these and I put in customer last name, comma, customer first name. You with me here? Well, if I didn't change it, it would think my last name is Jeff and my first name is Scott, but I could then flip these. All right. To me, like I said, that's the hard way. Also, if you notice, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. What's missing from here is the customer ID. Since it's an auto increment field, when you fill it up like this, you don't have to put in a value. Now, let's look at the easier way of doing this. I'm going to get rid of all this. Everything that's in gray right here, look on the screen. I'm not going to use any of it. But now it needs to have something that's going to hold the place for the customer ID. So we should be able to come in here and put in the word null. All right. So insert into customers values like this. Now it's showing me this. I'm looking at this. It says ending quote was expected because I didn't put an ending quote there. There you go. Now to me, that is much easier. You may agree, you may not agree. All right. Now let's run it and see if it works. So I'll leave it up there for a second. You can put in me. You can put in anything. Put in Joe Blow. It doesn't really matter. The other thing is, remember we had that one. I think that their first customer, I think, was that Suzanne Viscas. You could put her in again. You could repeat all the information. That's a bad thing to do. And there are ways that you can keep that from happening. We're not going to be going over those right now. All right. So I've got all that stuff in there. And again, null will be the placeholder for the customer ID. Jeff will be the first name. Scott will be the last name. 751 Parr Road will be the address. Wentzville will be the city. MO will be the state. 63385 will be the zip code. 314 will be the area code, and 286-3675 will be the phone number. You'll see that the area code is the only one that is not in quotes, because in our schema, that one was set up as a small integer. So if I put in all that stuff, and then I click go, if it comes back like this and it says one row inserted, it worked. All right. Now, I can go back, look, if you would please all look on the screen here. If I do come back and say this, if I say select star from customers, which says show me all of them, all right, and I run this, well, it says we've got 28 now. Remember we had 27 before? But it only shows the first 24. So I don't even see me. So there's two ways I can handle that. One of them is to go down to the bottom here and click either the greater than or the double greater than sign, and I should be the last one in there, and you can see that indeed I am. As I make it smaller, you can see everything is in there. So that's one way I can do it. Let's talk about other ways we can check to make sure that worked. All right. So I can come in here, and instead of saying select star from customers, I can say select star from customers where customer first name equals Jeff and customer last name equals Scott. Does that make sense? What's the problem with doing that? It's not an error, but what's the problem? I could have multiple Jeff Scotts. That's a scary thought, but it's possible. In fact, I would guess that if you looked at Amazon's database, they've got multiple Jeff Scotts in there. All right, but I know I've only got the one, so if I put this in, select star from customers, remember these backticks, you don't need them unless you create a name of a table and that table name or the name of a field and that field name has a blank space in it. So you can leave them in there or you can remove them. It doesn't matter. What you cannot say, where first name equals Jeff and Scott or something like that. You've got to be very specific with the way you do this. I'm going to show you a bunch of ways that we can find out this information right now. All right. So if I've got that and I go in and I run the query and I click go, come on. Now you see it's just me. So that's one way of doing it, right? That's one way. Another way we could do this, and that's because that's kind of a lot of work. Remember, if we say select stars like this, all right, we're not going to see it on the first page. And I just showed you how we could fix that. All right. Well, we could also say order by customer ID descending. And that'll show them in reverse order that they were put in. So now I should be the top one on the first page, correct? So there's, like I said, there's a multiple number of ways of doing this. All right, this should work. I don't know why it wouldn't, but it's going to show me the bottom 24 records that are in here. So there I am right on top. And you'll notice customer ID, 28, 27, 26, 25, 24, etc. All right. And let's just talk just for a second here on a couple of other things, related things. First thing is, you already saw this, what I'm about to do, but when we did this before, when we said select, make that a little bigger, when we said select count star from customers, when we did this before, it said 27. It sure as heck better say 28 right now because it put in another record. And 28. There it is. Again, you know now how you can change that heading if you don't like it saying count star like that. Oops. All right. Other things that you can do. So let's, again, when we looked at this, I'm going to go and I'm going to type in this. Describe customers. I want to make sure I can see everything that's in there. All right. And I'm going to click go. So this is what the customer table has in it. I think you'd all agree with that. All right. What if I want the city and the state for each customer? I don't care about their name. All I care about is the city and the state. Don't ask me why. Again, maybe it's for a report or something. It's not that important. But I've got a customer city and I've got a customer state. You can see that. All right. So if I come in here and I type in select customer city, comma, customer state, no, not street address, customer state from customers. All right. Pretty obvious, hopefully at least, what's going on there. That should show me 28 different cities and states. If I did it right, I don't think I typed in anything incorrectly there, but I'm going to check. So I'm going to run this. And what do we got? You can see there's a whole bunch of them. Okay? And I think you'd also agree that we've got, at least from what I can see in here, Redmond, Washington is in multiple times. Would you agree with that? If I did a count on this right now, it would come back as 28. I think that makes sense to everybody. But what if I only want to show Redmond once? Does that make sense to you? All right. So I can come in here and I can type in, instead of what we had before, this is what we had, and I'm going to make a change to it in a second. So we had select customer city, comma, customer state. I'm going to change this from customers. You can put all that on one line. I just don't keep typing because I don't want it to go off the page in line wrap where it's harder for you to read. But if I come in here and I put in this word, distinct. So I'm saying now select distinct customer city, customer state. Let's see how that changes. Remember, we have 28 in there right now. All right, so I'm going to grab that and I'm going to tell it to go. Well, it says I've got an error in my syntax. What is it? Select distinct customer city, comma, customer state from customers. I think I know what the error is, but we'll see right now. So let me try it again. Select distinct customer city, comma, customer state from customers. See if that works. So let me see, and then I'll come right back again to the query. All right. 21 total. Okay, here it is. And I got to make this smaller so you can see it. But what you should notice in there is I don't have any repeats. See that? Now, there is a weird thing about distinct. You can only use it once in a query. So I can't say select distinct customer city, comma, distinct customer state. It doesn't work. What, who cares? Well, it found here Duval, Washington, correct? If there was a Duval, New York, it wouldn't find it in here. You see what I'm saying? All right. And I can even combine some of this stuff. So as an example, I can say select, let's see, count distinct customer city. I don't know if it's gonna, it might choke on this, I don't know. Might have to do it like this. Customer state from customers. You start to see, hopefully, this may not even work. I don't know. Nope, it doesn't like me doing it like that. So let's see. Count. Oh, I think it's because I did this. I don't want that or that. I want this in the parens. Count of a distinct customer city. So let me make that bigger. All right. And let me just see if it works. So I'll copy it and I'll run it and come back again. All right. Says 1 total. Well, somewhere in here it gave me the answer. Looks like 21. So I've got 21 different cities in here. All right, when I ran this. Now, you start looking at it, you're like, okay, so this is the query that I had in there. Let's just break this query down. It always works. Well, that was interesting. It always works from the inside out. Did you hear me? So it's going to do first, it says, okay, we've got parentheses. So it says, find the customer city, find the distinct customer cities, give me a count of those, and then give me the customer state. Does that make sense? Typically, if you're going to run it, you're not even going to put state in there. You're just going to run it like this. These queries, when you use the word count like this, they're referred to as an aggregate query because it is going and it's looking at how many are in the entire thing. I don't know if that makes sense to you or not. but there's more. We're going to look at a couple other ones. All right, count you can run all over the place. Let's pretend for just a second, if you look up on the screen, we're going to pretend that we've got a real simple table, real simple, okay? And we're going to have 3 fields in it. Okay, we're starting up a brand new company. We're going to have a first name, we're going to have a last name, and we're going to have a salary. You with me? And we've just hired 3 people. So we've got John Smith. John's going to make $50,000 a year. We've got Mary Jones, and Mary's going to make $75,000 a year. And we've got Ben Murphy, and we just hired him in, and we're fighting over salary. Are you with me? So right now we know the salary of 2 of our people. Now, there's a real important reason that I'm showing you this, okay? If I come through here, whoops, and I say, select, count, star, let's just say this whole thing in here, this is called EMPS for employees. If I say select, count, star from EMPS, what am I going to get? It's not a trick. What do you think I'm going to get? 3. There's 3 employees in there, correct? That makes sense, right? Okay. But you don't have to put star in there. And that's why I want to show you. You don't have to use the word star. Now, if I come in here and I say this, now what do you think it's going to return? It's not 3. 2, because there's only 2 salaries. Now, there's other things that you can put in here. We're going to look at those in just a second. But you can use max, you can use min, you can use average. Those and count are going to be the ones you're going to almost exclusively use. There's other ones that you can use if you're doing things like variance and standard deviation, etc. It's over my head. I mean, I had to take a statistics class in college, and I could tell you what all that stuff is. I did my best to forget about it as soon as I finished the class, and I have done so. So, for instance, if I did max salary, it's going to come back 75,000. If I do min, it's not going to come back with no. It should come back with 50,000. Do you understand what I'm saying? And average should count the 2 up. But when you use count and you use star, it includes everything. But when you use count, you don't have to say that. So in other words, if I said count of salary, all right, it would literally count 50, 75, and it would count the no, and it would say 125. All right, so the point is, when you use star, you're telling it to include everything, even stuff with no values. So if you use count or any of these and you don't put in star there, in fact, I don't even know if max star would work right here. That doesn't make any sense. But I wanted to show you a couple of these things because aggregate queries are used a lot. They're not at all on this handout that I gave you. But I thought about it later and I thought, well, I should have at least shown you some of that stuff. My question is, does what's up here in this query on the screen here, does that make sense? That it's going through and it's asking for that. Now, we could do a similar thing. And let's forget about the count right now. And let's change this to state. You know that we've got a bunch of people here from Washington. You know that. All right. So selecting distinct customer state from customers, what is that going to show us? I think you'd agree, looking at that, it's not in any kind of order. The first one it finds is somebody from Washington. From then on, anytime it finds somebody from Washington, it just skips them. Eventually, it finds somebody from Texas. If it finds any more from Texas, it's going to skip them. Does all that make sense? Now, if we wanted to put a little rhyme and reason onto this, we could come back in here and change this and say order by customer state, which will then put it in ascending order, which might make it a little bit easier to read. So if I come through here now and run this one, I get the same results as before, but again, you might find that a little bit easier to swallow, so to speak. All right. So distinct is one that you might use quite often, depending on the circumstances. Okay, so again, that was just select distinct customer state. Again, that will throw away any repeats that it finds. And remember, if I leave the distinct off of there, I don't need the parens. I don't think it would even hurt to leave them there. But if I do this, now it's going to go back and give me 28 records. So there's all my Californias. There's my one Missouri. That's me. There's the Oregons. There's the Texas. There's the Washington, etc. All right. It always depends on what it is you're looking for. Aggregates are meant to work on the whole thing. All right. So let's just take a look at how something like an aggregate, for example, might end up being used. All right. So let's see. I don't even remember. I came over to here and I just clicked up on here where it says database sales orders. And I'm going to click on where it says products right here. What does that do? That shows me all the products. It shows me another way that you could look at these. All right. Well, I don't like that. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to tell it to describe products. I don't need the where. I don't need the backtick, although I could, again, leave the backtick in if I wanted to. So describe products. So what's in here? Well, there's a retail price. I think you'd all agree with that when you look at it. What if I want to find out what costs the most in this company, as far as what's my most expensive product? Does that make sense? All right. So hopefully you already can figure it out yourself, but it's got retail, it's called product retail price. So if I come in here and I say select max product retail price from products. All right. And I run it and it says my most expensive product is $1,800. All right. I could also do min, which would find the smallest one. Now, how many things in here do we have that cost $1,800? I don't know, and I don't care. I don't know if I tried doing this. Let's see. If I came in here, oops, come on, and we just said select max, whatever it was, product retail price from products. All right. I don't know. I've never tried anything like this that I can think of. Could I do a count of that? I don't know. So what I'm trying to see is if this gives me back something that's one, I would think that would mean we only have one thing that cost $1,800. All right. I'm hoping it comes back with more than one. Didn't like it. Says invalid use of a group function. Well, that didn't help much, did it? What that means is we have to change around the order in which we run things. It doesn't like what we're doing. It doesn't understand syntactically what was put in here. It's not that we got count, there's a paren, that works. All right. And there's different ways of handling this. All right. The first thing that came to mind to me, guess what? You could have a query inside of a query. So I could write a query first that asked what the maximum price was. Then I could write a query that uses the output of the first query as the input into the second query. We're actually going to try to take a look at that. Not today, though. It's just too much to throw at you. All right. So let's talk in here, and let's take a quick look. So let's see. So I'm going to select first star from, let's try categories, because that's one of the easiest ones there is in here. Categories. All right, so select star from categories, pretty darn simple. For some reason when I make this too big, what didn't it like? There's our categories, okay? So you can see we've got accessories, we've got bikes, etc. Okay? So let's see. Well, if I look at products, so is everybody cool with this? You all see we've got 6 different categories, okay? I'm going to look at products. So instead of selecting star from categories, I'm going to select star from products. And you'll see that, oh, I'm sorry. I wanted to describe products first, then we'll do that. So I want to describe products. And you see that products have this stuff. They've got a product name, they've got a product description, short and long, an image, a retail price. Hey, they got a category ID. Okay? So, big deal. It's going to be a big deal in just a second. All right? So, I don't remember how many products we had. I think it was 40 of them. All right? So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to do this. I'm going to say select product name, product retail price from products. I mean, that should be pretty obvious when you take a look at that. It should be pretty obvious to you what that's going to give back. It should give me back each product's name, and it should give me back each product's price. Does that make sense? All right. So I'm going to grab that one, and I'm going to run it. And what does it have? Well, look. There's the name, there's the price. There's the name, there's the price. And it said that we've got 40. It's pretty much what I thought would happen. Okay? But I can come in here and I can add to that. And I can say, okay, show me all this stuff. And also show me the category ID. All right? So now I'm asking for 3 things. So I added category ID to this. And I'm coming in here and I'm running it. Now I've got this. Tell me what's a good thing and what's a bad thing about what I just did. Anybody? What's a good thing? I now have a category, right? What's a bad thing? James, quick, what's category 4? Come on, what is it? No, what is it? Come on, you know. No, you don't. You know what I'm saying? And imagine you had thousands of categories. That's not going to help us too much, is it? So what we want to be able to do, going back to this picture that we looked at before, whoops, that's the wrong one, this one. So going back to this, what we basically want to be able to do is, we're in the products table right now, right? We've got the name, we've got the retail price, and we just put in the category ID. That's all fine and dandy. But wouldn't it be nicer to put in the product name from here, the product retail price from here, and then go down to here and get the category description? All right? And we can do that because you can see these 2 tables are linked, and they're linked by category ID. So let's see if we can write a query that'll give us that information.
Okay, so it's like an example of like...
It's a join. And we're able to do that again directly on those 2 tables because there's a field in common. Now I'm going to show you the older syntax. Mr. Smith and I go round and round about this. He uses only the newer syntax. I use the older because I think it's more self-documenting. We're going to go into the newer next week. All right? But, and I'm doing this off the top of my head, but I see no reason why it won't work, except for the fact I'm the one doing it. But, so we want, what do we want here? the product name, we want the product retail price, and we want the category description, not the ID. I don't care about the description. All right, so I'm going to type in here category description. And you're going to notice right away, it ain't going to work. Why isn't this going to work right here?
Because we're not in categories right now.
Because there's no category description inside of the products table. So we have to add that. Now, here's the wrong way of doing it. If we do that, my guess is, I could be wrong, I'm going to run it just to be sure. I think we're going to get 240 back. And I'll explain why we get 240 in just a second, but let me hold this, copy it, just to be sure I've got it, and run this. 240. Anybody want to take a wild guess how I knew that was 240? There are 6 categories, and there's 40 products. Do the math. It did what was called a Cartesian product join. It gave every combination, all right, of everything. Each one had all 3 properties in there. Now, many years ago, I created a database, and it had, I think it was 6,396 records in it. I did it along with a friend of mine. He was an expert in Excel, so I told him what I wanted, and we fudged and we made this database up. And we had a person who wrote a query like this. And they sat near the back of the room, and I couldn't see their monitor. They ran the query. If you do the math and you take 6,396 and multiply it by 6,396, comes back to around 39 million. And it was displaying all of them on the screen. So you can imagine that. And they were afraid to ask what was wrong. All they had to do was a control break to get out of it. But I came over later, and they were just kind of looking at me weird, and I said, what's wrong? Look, this has been going on for like the last 45 minutes. No, don't do that. All right. Now, as we do this, we want to add this just like this, but we have to join those 2 tables together. So we have to say this, where categories dot category ID equals products dot category ID. Now, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to make this much easier to read in just a second, okay? But I want to see if that works. How many products do we have? We said 40, correct? So if this is correct, we should get 40 records back. If we get a number other than 40, something is probably still wrong with this. There they are. Now, those are just the first 24, but you get the idea. All right. And it looks like it did put them in order based on the category description. You might get that, you might not always get that. So let's go back to here and let's talk about how we could not fix this, but maybe make it a little easier to understand. All right. There is only one field with product name. It is the products table. There is only one field with the product retail price. It's the products table. There is only one field with a category description. It is the categories table. Are you with me? That's it. We could have literally prefaced each one of these. So I could have said products dot, notice I'm not getting an error, products dot, it's also turning them blue, and categories dot. That's basically what we're doing. Is it's known as fully qualifying your names. Okay. Now that's kind of hard, and if you've got tables that are really got a long name, that's a pain in the butt. So if you do want to fully qualify, again, most people do it like this. They put a P here and a C here, and then this becomes P, P, C, C, I'm sorry, C, doesn't matter which one of those go first, and P. For the category, this right here?
Yeah.
Yep, you're right, that's a C. That is still fully qualifying, thank you. but it's fully qualifying using an alias. Even though the alias isn't defined until down here, you can still use it up here. All right. And many people that I know that work in databases fully qualify everything they're doing. Even if they're only getting it from one table, they fully qualify it anyway, because they just want to make sure that everything looks exactly the way that it should. All right. Now, when we ran this should still run. I'm going to grab it and copy it. So we've got it. I'm going to grab this and run it again. And as you saw, doesn't look too bad. All right. What if we did this? What if we ran this same query here and we said, whoops, order by, let's say price. How about P dot product retail price in descending order? That should give us the most expensive one on down. Would you agree with that? I think that's the way it, the way it would work. All right, again, I'm just going to copy all this. All right, and then try to run it. Now, the good news is that now I've got all of my stuff in order. That's the good news. What's the bad news? This is not done anymore by category. See that? Wouldn't it be nice if I could have, okay, I've got my bikes here, but if I've got other bikes or something like that, you see what I'm saying? And I'm doing all this off the top of my head, so it's kind of fun. I should be able to come in here and say group by P dot category ID and then order by. And I'll bring this up in just a second. I want to see if it works first. Nope, it didn't do it. Didn't do what I thought it would do, at least. It just gave the first one. See that? That's not good. So, go back again. Let's make this bigger, see if we can fix it up. All right. I'm going to get the order by, I'm going to get rid of this for right now. And I want to see, this should, right here, work, and it should be all by category. Okay, should. So let's see if that's indeed correct. And that only gave me 6 back. All right. So what's wrong? Well, something's wrong, so I'm going to figure out what it is. So select these from this, group by. How many categories are there? How many categories are there? 6. All right. So the easiest way to fix this, again, would be to write what's called a nested query, a query inside of a query. We're going to do that next week. All right. And if we leave the group by out, everything, this is what we had originally, everything, for lack of better words, is hunky-dory. All right. So in other words, if I've got this, this should give me every product name, followed by their price, followed by their category description. Okay. And that should work just fine. And you can see it does. Now, notice too, I'm looking at this. Nope. It's not, it looks almost like it is in order already, because look at this. This is an order. All of our accessories are in alphabetic order. See that? What if we wanted them in order based on the price? You already saw the problem with that. All right. We can put them in order by price, but then we lose. So if you're going to try to write straight queries like that, you're not always going to be able to do it. Sometimes you're going to have to write a query within a query to do it. And again, we are going to get into that next week. All right, I've got a couple more of these worksheets that I have been working on. But what I want to show you then, see where we are here, about 45 minutes in, okay, is if you look, these were, where is it? This was the worksheet that I gave you. All right. So this showed the schema of each thing that was in there. We went through that already. This gave you a count of how many records was in there. We went through that already. This showed you two different ways that you could go and insert something that's in there. To be consistent now, all right, let's assume, grab that, I don't remember what it is offhand, so give me a second here. All right, there's the address for Rankin Technical College in St. Louis, okay? But what I'm saying here is to be consistent, and I want to make sure I've shown you everything, especially those of you who weren't here the other day. Let's go back in to here, and I'm going to update customers. And I'm going to set customer city equal to St. Louis. And I'm, let's see, customer city equal to St. Louis, where customer city is equal to Wentzville. Now, that's both a good thing and a bad thing. The good thing is it should work. The bad thing is now anybody who was in there as Wentzville is now in there as St. Louis. Does that make sense? All right. So let's run this and see if indeed it works. One row affected, that usually means that it worked. All right. But I'm going to say select star from customers. Whoops. Order by customer ID in descending order. So I should be first. And when you look in here, there I am, but it's changed to St. Louis. Now we could do massive updates, and that's all totally fine. One thing I want you to realize, okay? So we looked at the create, which was our insert. We've done the select, which is our read. All right, so create, read. We just did an update. Now, if I do a delete here, so if I delete me, and then I go back and I add, let's just say I delete me, and oh, I didn't mean to, I go back and add me again. Are you with me? Right now, I'm in there as customer ID 28. If I remove 28, since I'm using auto increment, it's gone. If I put myself back in again, I'm now 29. Does that make sense to everybody? Because what happens with a lot of companies, I mean, there's turnover. The bigger the company, the more turnover you're going to have. So with a lot of companies, what they do is if they remove someone like that, they might put them into yet another database table, some kind of a log table or whatever. So they still have that information about those people. All right. From what I heard, one of the electrical instructors resigned last week. I don't know if he went back into industry or not. I have no idea. But the point is, I'm sure that guy is still in Rankin's database someplace. Even after he gets his last paycheck, he'll still be in their database. All right. Okay. All right. Jumping back into here then. Now, I want to show you this. So like I said, I'm just going to walk through a couple of these. I'm going to go till about 10:15. I think that's enough. It's a Friday, so that's enough. But I want you to look at this. These three queries will all give you the same thing. All right. And I think we said I was 28. When I did this originally, I put myself in, removed myself a few times, so I would change that back to 28. There's all three of these will show me every person in there except me. Do you understand what I'm saying? Now, in most relational database management systems that I know, you do not equal to like this, what you see circled in there. In MySQL, it'll take it that way, or it'll take it that way. Unless you can't reverse those though. You can't can't do that. That doesn't mean anything to the system. All right? But you can come in if you want to and do it either one of those ways. All right? So if I wanted to sit there and say, okay, I want you to show me everybody except I don't want to see numbers 1, 7, 13, and 26. Okay, you with me? I want to see everybody except them. This would be a pain in the butt to write. So I could say select star from customers where customer ID not equal to 1 and customer ID not equal to 7 and customer ID not equal to 13 and customer ID not equal to 26. That would work. But a much easier way to do it is like this, because then I could just say in here, instead of this, I would say not in 1, 7, 13, 26. A little easier. So you can use in and not in to show inclusions or exclusions. All right, and it works real slick. And it's you cannot come in and say not equal to 28 and not equal to 31 and except you can't do that. It's just syntactically incorrect, so the system doesn't know what you're trying to do. All right, now I've said this before, it's like fighting with your spouse. It doesn't matter if you're right. You lose anyway. It's just that's the way it is. If you fight with the software and you do something that is breaking the software's rules, it's just not going to allow you to do it, period. And I should also say this too, because I don't have an example of this here, but I'm going to show you one on the board. Let's say that I wanted every salary. So let's assume we have all 28, or we got 8 employees, they all have salaries, okay? And let's assume I'm just going to make up 8 salaries. So 35,000, 46,000, 23,000, 50,000, let's just, 5 employees, all right? And 100,000. And let's say that I want to just see all of the salaries that are between I don't know, 40,000 and 60,000. You with me? I just want to see the ones that are between there. Well, what's between 40,000 and 60,000? That one and that one, right? So we could write something that said something like select star from employees where salary greater than or equal to, I don't even remember what I said, but let's just say 40,000, and salary less than or equal to 60,000, something like that. That'd work, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. All right, but most relational database management systems have something that's easier to write because it results in less code. So rather than writing that, you can write select star from employees where salary between 40,000 and 60,000 or whatever it is we wrote. Get the idea? The first one works just fine that I put in there. It's recommended that you don't use that first one because the second one was actually written for databases. So it's been optimized internally. So if you are writing really complex queries, you should get the information back faster from the second one. All right. Okay. Next. When you look at this, I probably went a little nuts here, but I wanted to be able to talk to you about wildcards. You know how in operating systems and etc., that's often a wildcard? That means 0 or more. You don't use that here. The wildcard here for 0 or more is a % sign. All right, the wildcard for exactly one is an underscore. So if I said this, if I said A_D, where I was looking for something, that would find AAD a ND, a LD, etc. That makes sense? So if you're looking for just a single character, you use the underscore. That's not a minus or a hyphen, it's an underscore. If you're looking for 0 or more, you use the percent sign. So when you look at this example that's right here, because I repeated it quite a few times, but this says, show the query to select all customers who have a first name that starts with a vowel. And I'm not considering here Y to be a vowel. So their first name must either start with A, E, I, O, or U. All right? And it came back with 4 of them. So notice the first name like A, or the first name like E, or the first name, etc. You get the idea. Are there other ways of writing this? Yes. You can actually do some more programmatic things in here. Believe it or not, MySQL supports the equivalent of like a switch statement. All right, where we've done switches with cases. I don't know if we're going to look at that or not, but the point is, this says the first name starts with A, or the first name starts with E, or with I, or with O, or with U, and has 0 or more characters following it. Does that make sense? All right, and if I grab this query and I run it, it's the same one you just saw. Andrew, Angel, Eliana, and Estella. You can see they all, as you can see right there, they all begin with a vowel. Then if we look at the next one, it says whose last names begin with a vowel. Well, one thing that you can tell by looking at this, all right, if you take a quick look. So this was the output that we just got. Would you agree, looking at the output right here? No one has a last name of these 4. Nobody has a last name that starts with a vowel. Would you agree with that? So eventually we're going to combine these two things together. We won't have anybody who has one of each, is what I'm telling you. All right. So if I go back to the query box here, I think I copied it. Yep. And I run this one. Now it's got 2. Sam Abelrose and Zachary Ehrlich. All right. And then the next thing that I showed you here, you can see how it starts getting ugly. But these are people who have a first name and a last name that begins with a vowel. Somebody guess how many is this going to return? No. What? No. How many people had a name that both started with a vowel, their first name started with a vowel, and their last name started with a vowel? 0. They should return 0. And I put this in here like this on purpose. All right? Because I want to tell you quickly, when I've taught this stuff before, what has happened. I'll have people who come up to me and say, hey, I thought I put the query in right and it didn't give me any response. That doesn't mean your query is wrong. That means there are no records that meet your criteria that you're looking for.
Does that mean we can use or instead of and?
When you use or, it means that meet either criteria or both. And they must meet all criteria. So if we did this again and we went back and rewrote this, I think this is what you're asking. All right, if we made this an or, like that, now we should get 6. All right. There they are. So there's the 3 and the other one, and there's the 2 in the middle. All right. So again, the point of that, of showing you that, is you've got to realize, it may be that what you're looking for, there's nothing that meets that criteria. If we assume that all of us here are working for a company, and let's just say we all make decent money, so we all make 100,000 or less. If my boss comes in and has a query and says, okay, I'm going to do a query and see how many of you are making $1 million or more, it comes back with 0. That doesn't mean the query was wrong. That means there's no records that meet that criteria. That's all it means. All right, I'm just going to buzz through it quickly. So we've already looked at those. All right. So what you have in here, and you feel free to take a look at it, because I'm going to let you do whatever for the last hour and a half today. All right. But I've got some stuff in here that I've got a bunch of different joins. And then we got some joins where we say, rather than showing us everything, only show us stuff that is in this category or in this category. All right. Do everything, but everything that's not in one of those two categories. Just so you see that kind of stuff. All right. And like I said, much of these, they're very similar to one another. But I wanted to go down to here and show you down towards the end here. This is called a union query. When you do a union query, you're combining two things together. You're unioning them. Now, you may or may not be aware of this, but if you look up on the screen here, I'm going to run 5 minutes over, so sorry about that. But if I come back in here and I do this, if I say describe employees, all right, so I'm going to describe them. And there they are. Yeah, in just a second, I'm going to say describe customers. Guess what? It's identical if you replace every occurrence of employee with customer. Do you understand what I'm saying? All right. So we can union those two together because they have all fields in common, except we don't include the ID because those are different. All right. So if you look on here, that's what I did. Select customer first name, customer last name, customer, etc. From then the word union with everything else with employee. We get 35 back. Now it'd probably be 36 now because we've got 28 customers and 8 employees. That's why you get that number when you union. The problem with that is whatever one you list first, all right, whatever one you list first, they're all going to say customer first name, customer last name, etc. Does that make sense? Because it just uses the first one. So then I went back and renamed them. First name, last name, I gave them a generic name. All right. Then put a couple of examples in here. This is called the Concat Operator. What does that mean? It's going to glue together here this example that you see and what you see there that's in gray. Now it's going to sandwich together the area code with the phone number. Well, that's fine, except it's going to look real ugly. So instead of like 314-286-, it'll be just 314-286-. So that's kind of ugly, but it works. And then I went back and fixed it more. Now look, because this is almost a little programming. This says put in a parenthesis, then convert the area code. And the area code is an int. Remember, it's a small int. This says convert it to an nchar, which means convert it to a character. Then put in another parenthesis and a space, then put the phone number. And I just want to show you these, just the last two. So like I said, this one and the next one. And what you notice right away when you take a look at it, notice what the phone number looks like now. And I gave it a generic name, a phone number. And in the last query, what I did was I used the concatenation operation to combine these two into one field and to combine these three into one field. Does that make sense? So it looks a little slicker. We are not changing the data. We're just changing the way the data looks. That's it. So if I run the last query that I created in this list that I gave you, which is down here, and it's pretty ugly. I mean, you can see how long it's getting. It's 23 lines. All right. If I come down and run this, that's about as nice as I can make that look, I think. But you'll notice the name has now been concatenated together. Nothing with the address, but I concatenated together the city, comma, space, the state, space, the zip, and then the phone number. Just so you can start to see some of these different operations that are in here. All right. Now, if you're still behind, I am going to try to grade this weekend, everything, get all caught up. All right. And you've had homework through whatever it is, chapter 15. There is no homework for chapter 17. All right. What I'd like to do on Monday is two things. First, I'd like to continue with this, but I'm going to give you another one of these worksheets that's going to have some other stuff on it. All right. And I'd like us to go over the written test for chapter 17, because that was just generic in nature. It was stuff on databases. If we don't finish on Monday of next week, we'll finish this up on Tuesday. When we get back in on Tuesday, I'm going to show you what this database would look like in SQL Server, which is Microsoft's relational database management system. All right, I've been using this one because it allowed me the opportunity to both A, show you MySQL or MySQL, and B, show you a GUI type of interface. All right, and can you use SQL Server with this? I never tried. I don't really know. All right, questions? So by next week, we'll be back into the book, be back into chapter 18, and what we're going to eventually do, and probably not next week, but probably start at the week after that, is we're going to write our own CRUD application using this database. We're not going to have enough time in 3 weeks we're going to be able to put in all 7 or all 8 of these tables and allow you to do CRUD on everything, but we'll put some of it in. I'm still working on that right now. All right. And that's all I had.